Hello. My name is Edgar Padilla, and I was working with the Aquatics over there, the team. It's all of them. I am currently going to be a junior in Lindblom Math and Science Academy, and my project was about sunlight preference among Japanese beetles. So some background information. Japanese beetles are invasive species. They've become a pest in the U.S. because, unlike in Japan, they don't have a natural predator which contains their population. They're not picky at all. They eat a bunch of different plants. They feed on the leaves, and they skeletonize the leaves, meaning that they eat the tissue and leave the veins. I have a picture I'll show you guys. They affect a lot of the plants that I'm working with in the shoreline and in the glen around the Plant Science Center. And they like to swarm plants. I'll explain why. Particularly the ones in the sun, and they're more active from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And by learning about their eating habits, we can come up with more effective control methods. So this is what they do to the plants. See in the picture on the right, they're skeletonizing the leaf, leaving just the veins. And on the left side, that's them devouring a flower. So one reason that they prefer plants in the sun is that when larvae mature and turn into beetles, they emerge from the ground, and they like to emerge from warm soil, which is most likely soil that's being directly hit by the sun. And when the females emerge, they release sex hormones, and this affects all the male beetles, and a presence of beetles attracts more beetles, and they just swarm. So my question was, do Japanese beetles prefer plants completely exposed to the sun over plants in partial shade? And I hypothesized that there would be more Japanese beetles on the plants exposed to the sun than the plants that are not. The independent variables were plants completely exposed to the sun and plants in partial shade, and the dependent variable was the number of Japanese beetles. That's what I would be testing for. So for my experiment, a controlled area was chosen, which was the glen surrounding the Plant Science Center. 7 plant species were chosen for observation: Aronia, fireweed, the obedient plant, cornus, rose, and hibiscus and iris. Counter was used to count the beetles, and observations were taken about the same time every day, which was about 2:30. This is the area I was testing in. So, wait, hold on. Sorry, I'm not gonna use this pointer. So the side over there, that was like in the shade because the building was blocking out the sunlight. The left side, that was being hit mostly by the sun, so that's where most of the plants were that I was testing for, completely exposed to the sun. So on a typical day, which was, I derived this data from averaging 6 days which had similar weather and similar conditions. So it was pretty clear that they preferred the plants in the sun, like way more Japanese beetles than the ones in the shade. But there were a couple outliers, which were the day that the hibiscus plant flowered. They really liked that flower. There were like at least 7 beetles per individual flower. And so the numbers decreased for every other plant, and they increased for the hibiscus. Another outlier was the overcast day, which was just completely shade. There was no sun at all. The number of Japanese beetles decreased for every plant. It seemed that they were being knocked off from the rain, and they were just, they weren't doing anything that day. So in conclusion, the data I collected supported my hypothesis. It was clear that they preferred plants in full sunlight over ones in partial shade. This is important to gardeners and anyone attempting to grow plants. If there are Japanese beetles in the area where you're attempting to grow plants, it'd be smart to put them in an area where they won't be exposed to the sun all day. And this could significantly reduce the damage done by the Japanese beetles. Something that could have offset the data collected were the multiple variables that could not be controlled: the weather, amount of sunlight, precipitation. Also, something that could have provided me with more varied data would have been a larger research area. That's it. I'd like to thank my mentor Chrissy and all the seasonals that I work with, Ben and Murphy, Shelly, and everybody in College First who made this a wonderful experience. Thank you guys, especially you, Robert.
Any questions?
Yeah.
I remember you said something about the shorelines.
Yeah.
Do you know, because I know the Chicago Botanic Garden just recently restored its shorelines, so I don't know, do you know if they're taking any action against the Japanese beetles? Because I thought it'd be really weird if they just let beetles eat up their new.
Yeah, we're not doing anything to control the Japanese beetles.
Okay.
Yes.
It's not a hard question. Do you have any ideas why the sunlight may have affected how they were
Well, it was, hold up. I kind of mentioned that. It was over here. So there's, when Japanese beetles, when they emerge and, when they turn into Japanese beetles from larvae, they emerge in warm soil, which is usually like in the sun. They like to be in plants in the sun. And when these Japanese beetles emerge, the females, they release sex pheromones, and this attracts more beetles, which in turn release pheromones, and then they just attract beetles and they swarm the plant. Yeah.
What about the number of plants of different species in the shade versus
Can you repeat that, please?
what do you know about the number of species in the shade versus the number of species in the sunlight?
For the plants that I was testing on, or doing observations on, there were there were plants both in the sunlight and in the shade, but it did vary. Some plants, there were more of them in the sunlight than there were in the shade, so that's something that could have affected the data as well. Any other questions?
Did you have hibiscus in the shade too?
Yeah.
And they were attracted the same way as in the sun?
Yeah, there were. Wait, let me see. Hold on. I'm sorry. Yeah, there were in the shade, but they weren't. There weren't as many of them in the shade. Yes. I mean, it's not that dark. You can see. That was also something that could have affected it, but they don't move a lot. They tend to be on the same plant for a really long time. Is that it? No more questions? Thank you.
Do I exit out?